Divas, I am super excited about this week's episode. You are going to be learning so much, and I learned so much with these three experts who joined me in the Speakeasy to tell me all about AI data centers and their impact on local communities, the issues around power and energy, and the benefits they bring to communities. We have some super smart guys with us this week. Buddy Rizer, the Executive Director of Loudon County Economic Development. He's down here from Virginia. Dr. David Gattie, Associate Professor of Engineering at the University of Georgia. And Kevin Doyle, Florida Executive Director, Consumer Energy Alliance. This is the hot topic. The president came out on this issue this week, and so did the governor, and so is the Florida House of Representatives, because this is AI week in the House. So stick with us. AI, data centers, and what's all the talk about?
The opportunity is there for Florida to be a leader, and we need to make sure that we protect that and celebrate that. And I think we can do that here in Tallahassee.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
Oh, Divas. I am so excited to have you join us today for a really special show. We've got three experts on AI here in the Speakeasy with me. That's right, live and in person, three experts. They are not OGs. They are new to me. So I want you to help me be patient with them. And also, I'm a little bit out of my wheelhouse. I'm going to admit it right up front on AI data centers. Please feel free to correct me. I tried to do a crash course overnight. I lost my driver's license this morning. That threw me off my game too. But welcome to Buddy Rizer, Executive Director. I said I was going to let you guys introduce yourselves, so I'm going to do that. I'm Dara, the queen of everything. And you are?
I am Buddy Rizer. I'm the Executive Director for Economic Development in Loudon County, Virginia.
And I'm David Gattie. I'm an Associate Professor of Engineering and a Senior Fellow with the Center for International Trade and Security at the University of Georgia.
Perfect. And I'm Kevin Doyle, and I'm the Vice President of State Affairs for Consumer Energy Alliance based here in Florida.
So you guys, Divas, you can understand why I might be more than just a little bit intimidated to have these three gentlemen in here with me. They are experts in the field and renowned. And so we're going to learn, and the timing of this could not have been better, right? Because the president just came out with something, and maybe you can tell us what the president's plan is for AI. I think, my goodness, the Florida legislature is really hot on preempting local governments from doing things. And it sounds to me like the federal equivalent of state preemption. Can one of you tell me what the president's plan is? And we're talking, and now I think Kevin is going to start speaking.
Yeah, it's the timing is good for us to be here because obviously this is a topic that everybody's talking about.
Right.
And I think, the president, there are some vague statements on general and what specifics might be regarding these plans that are being put out, but it does show the importance of what's going on. Now, the president is all about making sure that we win the AI race against China, the national security impacts about it, and also too the economic security impacts that doing this right would cause for the United States and for us here in Florida. But I think what it's causing is us to kind of have this serious discussion right now that needs to happen on how we do this. We do it the right way. Right now, Virginia is leading the way in housing data centers and showing how you can continue to have affordable energy, but also have great economic development and supporting this new technology. Georgia is right behind them. And I think Florida has a great opportunity to also be a leader in the way to ensure that we can take our part alongside with them.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because it feels to me like a lot of, and I'm not one, I have no opinion. I'm a reporter. I kind of try to stay, I feel like the podcast, sometimes I do get a little bit into the editorial side, but my friends will tell me, hey, you got a little out of your lane. So I'm trying not to do that. And in my research, obviously there's a lot of NIMBYism going on with this issue. And you were here, the speaker, House Speaker, we call him Daniel Perez. He had an AI week. This is AI week, and that's how we happen to be recording this. And again, the timing of this couldn't be better. So also you've got this kind of pressure from the federal government now. And then you also have the governor who recently said he wants an AI Bill of Rights. And can you tell us what that might mean in terms of what kind of legislation we could be looking at?
No, and, we haven't seen language yet, but obviously I think, the unknown. Folks are, hear about AI, they remember seeing movies like The Terminator or things like that when they were younger and thinking the machines are taking over. But I think at the end of the day, I think it's an opportunity for, leaders like Buddy and David and our folks in Terra and Tallahassee to educate folks on what AI really is, what data centers are, what kind of, assets they bring to the table and the opportunities that are here. AI is going to help everybody with regards to, healthcare or communications or government service. It's already doing that. So I think we need to, embrace it. Guardrails are probably important in many ways to ensure data is protected. But again, it goes back to the opportunity is there for Florida to be a leader. And we need to make sure that we protect that and celebrate that. And I think we can do that here in Tallahassee.
Well, I don't know how you can even exist without touching AI now. I mean, every time you do a Google search, pretty much, you're getting a Gemini response. I had Dave Ehrenberg. I don't know if you guys know who he is. Probably not. You're not Florida people, really, but he's a former state attorney, former state senator, former state attorney from Palm Beach County. I had him on the podcast recently, and I like to ask people what their favorite app on their phone. Oh, I gave it away, so you have time to think. A little surprise, fun question at the end. And he said Gemini, and I was kind of surprised by that because a lot of people are very intimidated. But as you're going around educating people, and we'll get into some of the concerns in a moment, but maybe you, Buddy or David, can tell me, what are you telling state leaders? What are you telling the House Speaker? What are you telling legislators that you think, when you talk about educating, what do they need to know?
Well, I think that for me, the main thing is we're about 20 years into the data center revolution in Loudon County. So the idea would be that we would want to be able to share the things that we have learned along the way and kind of help other communities kind of take advantage of that. So in Loudon County, we've been able to completely remake our economy and using data centers as our basis. We've gone from 19% of a commercial tax base to 51%. Today, 39% of all of our revenue comes from data centers on 3% of our land. So there is a real opportunity. There's a real opportunity to remake your economy, but try to make sure that you're considering this in a fact-based way, and you're looking at all the possibilities and all the opportunities and all the pitfalls, and try to mitigate those and do what's best for your community.
Well, I and maybe if you want to weigh in too, should I call you Dr. Gattie?
No, just call me David, please.
Okay, David. Maybe you might want to add. What are your how are you pitching this?
So we're up in Georgia, and the way we have talked with legislators in the past day or two here, Buddy has been on the front wave of data centers pretty much in the whole country. Georgia is coming in now. We've got data centers that want to come in. A lot of the reason is because we just built 2 nuclear reactors up there, and so we've got a lot of reliable power generation that's available. but what we're trying to talk with the general public about, and you've made, Dara, you made the good point, the right point. There's very little that we do that is not touched by some sort of data storage, data center, some sort of software that's on that platform. And so we're trying to help the general public understand the value proposition of this. It has an economic value proposition. It has an industrial-based value proposition, that is data centers and the technologies that are on that data center. And so maybe to that point, we call data centers choke point technology.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, tell us, what is a data center anyway? And we're talking about 2 different kinds, maybe.
Yeah. Real simple. It's a hard drive. It's a hard drive just like you would have on your computer. It's got data and information on it. Then you've got all the software that comes in on the computer, Excel and Microsoft Word and whatever those things are. And they use that data then for applications. The data centers are the storage. That's where the data and the information are. There are things that are going to come in on top of that with a different value proposition, things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, cloud computing, and other things. They add value to that data, and they add value so that we can use it. We get utility out of it. So the general public oftentimes maybe can't make or doesn't make the distinction, or we don't do a good job making the distinction between the data center and the technologies that are on that platform. So what we're doing in Georgia is we're trying to educate them on just that. And I think as we go through this podcast and the conversation with you, several of the things that we're dealing with are, and Kevin's already pointed it out, and that is to make sure that existing customers and ratepayers are protected, to make sure that we can meet the needs of the data center responsibly, like Buddy's been able to do up in Loudon County. And one of the things in particular that we do in my research group at university is we talk about the national security value part of it, and that is competition with China and other things that really are high-level value propositions for things like AI and machine learning.
I guess, and I'm sorry, did I distract you? Because
No,
I'm
you didn't.
talking about technology.
I thought maybe Kevin touched your microphone.
Somebody else? We're not naming names.
No,
I know nothing.
That's hilarious. No, I'm having a sound issue with my mic. So, but I was hoping maybe we could back up a little bit and tell me, just for our listeners, they are a very sophisticated bunch, but what would be an example of, so there's, it's kind of like, it reminds me, because I've been around for a minute, and one of my ex-husbands was a computer hardware and software engineer, and we actually had the very first Macintosh that ever was on the market. And the reason that I'm going to tell you this little story, just stick with me, it's a little bit of a long story. It was the first one. It was like a little square, sat on the desk, and they ran really hot. And so hot that they later iterations of it included a fan. But this, and it was so super cool, right? Because it had the little icon, it would smile, like very crude by today's standards. Very crude little smiley face when you turned it on. And I was in the kitchen one day, and I smelled something, and it smelled like something was burning. And I went into the den, and there was the it was called a Macintosh then. I don't think it was an Apple. I'm not sure. Yeah. And there was literally smoke coming out the top of it. And I looked at the screen, and it had the little icon, 2 X's for eyes, and the tongue sticking out. And I thought, well, that's really good marketing. You know, how could you feel bad? It was really, they did a great job. And we went out and like the next day and bought another one because we loved it. And I'm still a Mac/Apple person. Now I feel like I'm in a bad marriage with them because all of my devices are Apple and I can't get unstuck. But that's another story. That we'll never have them as a sponsor, I guess. But you know what I'm saying? The reason that I went down that little trip down memory lane with you guys is because that was just a small little computer generating a lot of heat. One of the things that there's discussion about in these data centers, you've got a lot of hardware in there doing a lot of activity, and it generates a lot of heat. And so you need a lot of water to cool it off. This is what I believe to be true. So tell me I'm wrong.
No, all of your, and I had one of those Macintoshes.
Weren't they great?
That's about, yeah, I'm a PC guy though. I like PC.
You got out of that relationship.
but everything that you explained, it does make sense, and you can feel the heat coming out of the back of your computer. In fact, if it's not working well, it's really, really hot. But what, again, old data centers probably generated a lot more heat than the ones that we're dealing with today.
Right.
It just depends on what decade you're looking at. But data centers and the technology around it, they're working on those very issues that you're talking about. Water consumption, if it's air-to-air cooling, like with a heat pump in your house. You got a heat pump?
I do. In fact, it's making a heck of a lot of noise right now.
Is it the inside unit or the outside unit?
It's inside.
Yeah.
Because I have a really old house and it's an old unit.
Yeah. You probably got a squirrel cage fan issue, but we digress. Right?
I'd be happy for you to come over and fix it.
but it doesn't use any water on site, right?
No.
So it's air-to-air cooling, what you have there. So there's no water consumption on site. But what you do have is you have a lot more power that's used to cool it. So data centers either have, and Buddy can talk about a lot of the data centers that he's got, that he's dealing with up in Loudon. They have a lot of it's air-to-air cooling, good bit of it's air-to-air cooling, but they're working regularly on advancing that cooling technology by what's called direct-to-chip cooling, and then another one that's a little more advanced. It's called immersive cooling. Those are things they're working on because, again, data centers want to reduce their power consumption. That's their biggest bill is electricity. So they're trying to get that bill down, and they want to reduce their water consumption. It's just good business for them. So that efficiency, that power usage efficiency, PUE, and the water usage efficiency, WUE, those have been coming down, and they'll continue to come down until they get to a certain point where you just can't reduce them anymore. So they're working on those things. So the things that you pointed out about a hot computer, that's exactly what they're dealing with in a data center. They're trying to keep those things cool because it's the lifeblood of the data center is to cool the components.
And that's really kind of the NIMBYism, I think, is, and I'm not trying to focus just on negative things, and I want you to talk about, I mean, you're here to educate me and the listeners and the legislature. They love them some deeper dive.
Yeah, and Buddy's got experience with talking, and he'll give you a lot of background on those.
Okay, yeah. So the noise too. So and I guess cost, because that's one of the issues that folks are concerned about. That's going to drive up their power costs.
Sure.
I mean, the governor is expressing this.
Well, and I think that there's kernels of truth in all of those issues. In Loudon County, we have a reclaimed water line. Water has never been an issue in our county, but I can see how in different places it would. But I think the industry will adapt to that. It tends to be more of a talked about issue than an actual issue. And so, we talked about, the immersion cooling. We talked about cooling to chip, closed loop systems. All those things are very possible and are coming forward. Today's data centers use a lot less water than 10 years ago even.
Like today's Macintoshes don't, like, smoke doesn't come out the top of them.
Doesn't come out of them. And I'm still stuck in the Apple ecosystem.
Okay, there you go.
You and me.
We need to form a support group.
Yeah, the sound thing. I mean, listen, your heat pump's making a lot of noise.
It is.
Heat pumps can make a lot of noise, and these are constantly running and are. But the key to that is where you put the data centers. If you don't put them next to housing, then it really doesn't become an issue of how it sounds.
So you're looking at rural areas, maybe,
or industrial areas, where your neighbors are factories or warehouses.
We don't have a lot of that in Florida. We don't have a lot of factory type activity in Florida.
No, but you have a lot of warehouse activity. I mean, when I drive up and down 95, I see warehouse and you could put up a data center right next to them and they would look exactly
right.
the same.
So we do have a lot of especially and guilty. Amazon probably has one not far from here just to service me.
Yeah, there you go. And so listen, there are those issues. Like we try to make sure that we don't have any data centers near homes. We've had a couple of occasions where homes have come in close to data centers or data centers have come into home. And that's where we tend to get most of our challenges. So we're trying, we now have a rule that no data center can go in within 500 feet of a home.
Oh, 500 feet. That's pretty close. That's not that far.
It's not that far, but you'd be surprised. Also, today's data centers are they're a lot quieter. The systems have gotten better and those kinds of things.
I mean, I'm sorry. Go, you finish, and then I have a question.
No, and I think that your last question was about the
cost to consumers,
and that is a real issue that has to be taken care of. In Virginia, we have not had that issue. Where the ratepayers have not had to pay for the additional cost of infrastructure. We're now codifying that in the legislature and through rate cases that the data centers will pay their fair share of what they build. That's important because in some communities, in some states, we've seen that happen where the cost of the utility bills have gone up. But we've seen that in places where there aren't data centers too. It really depends on the regulations, and certainly David knows a lot more about that than I do. But it's really important that when you look at all these things, you hit three of the big NIMBY complaints, right?
Right out of the gate. I didn't even give you a chance to do the pluses first.
Three of the top five, right? But I think that if you're going to be thoughtful about policy making and you're going to be thoughtful about the process, then you're going to take the time to address those concerns up front before you get in a situation where they become a problem.
We'll be right back with our three guests talking about AI data centers: Buddy Rizer, Dr. David Gattie, and Kevin Doyle. 160 miles per hour or more. That's the strength of today's hurricanes. Winds that turn debris into deadly weapons. Storms that intensify overnight. They're hitting harder, faster, closer. Our homes have to keep up. Build for 160 and beyond. Go to beautyofblock.com/impact/southeast to learn more. That's beautyofblock.com/impact/southeast to learn more. Divas, you know what time it is. It's time for the news in haikus. The news in haikus. And this week, we asked Google AI, that's Gemini, to do a haiku for us on our topic of the week. And here's what we got. Whirring, blinking lights. Data flows in constant heat. The cloud's heart beats on. The news in haikus. The news in haikus. Don't forget, we'd love to hear your haiku. You can slide them into my DMs, or you can send them to podcasts, that's podcasts with an S, at e.newsserviceflorida.com. Wherever you're listening, please don't forget to subscribe and give us a rating if you like what we're doing. And we're back with our 3 experts telling us all about data centers. Buddy Rizer, David Gattie, and Kevin Doyle. We just had a Florida Power and Light just did a rate case. It's getting quite a lot of attention. A colleague of mine wrote about it, and they built in this additional cost for the ratepayers for the data centers. And I don't, that's not, utilities is not my area. So I'm looking at the story. So I know that I got that much correct. I think it's something that people are pushing back on, like, why are we paying for something that's coming down the road? And
I didn't read the rate case that way.
Okay.
The way I read the rate case is that the data centers are going to have to pay a large share, by far the largest share of infrastructure and generation.
Right.
But it's important to note that, our grid is really old and hasn't been improved in a long time because energy usage in the United States was flat for 20 years.
That's right.
So there was no reinvestment. I mean, you think our bridges are in bad shape? You should look at the grid. There's a lot of work to be done there. But when I looked at that case, I thought that included some pretty good protection for the residential ratepayer. But well,
like I said,
that's not my state. So
it's not your state, and it's not my jam. So I could be wrong about what that rate case did. So if I am, Divas, don't send me emails yelling at me. But I will say that I have a friend who's in the wind business, and his company really does a lot of work in Brazil. And he was telling me yesterday, he was giving me a little bit of a wind and AI primer, data center primer. But what he said is that what they're talking about in energy spaces is that the country has, to your point about infrastructure, that we have a 12 to 18% energy deficit right now. Does that sound right to you? And that we're projected to have 10 to 12% short now, and we're projected to have a 15 to 20% deficit in 2030. This professor is giving me the stink eye, so I must be really off.
I was not doing that. I wouldn't do that as a guest in
David
Florida.
would do no such thing.
I would not do that. If it were a 10 to 12% shortage right now, lights would be out all over the country. So I'm not really sure what that statistic is about. It
might be about wanting to sell more wind power, but
if it is about a 10 to 12% shortage in reserve margins, that makes sense.
Okay.
But as long as all the lights are on in the country, we can't have a shortage right now. But to the point that you're making, there are, as far as projecting out, as we retire, things like coal plants and gas plants get old, we are going to see the need for new capacity. And if we don't build it, we are going to be short.
I see.
This is a plug. You could pull up my name and the national interest. And we actually had an article come out just yesterday on just that very thing about an aging infrastructure and the need for new capacity, artificial intelligence, and things like that. But there is going to be, Buddy made the point, that the NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, every summer and every winter come out with a reliability assessment. And every summer and every winter, does it at the peaks, summer and winter, it says that our grid is aging. We are not replacing it with conventional resources like coal, gas, and nuclear. And we are going to be facing a reliability crisis somewhere down the road if we don't start constructing new capacity, particularly up in the Northeast. Where you don't see that is down in the Southeast. Down in the Southeast, we have what's called a regulated, vertically integrated market structure, where our objective and priority is reliability long term. So in Florida, just like in Georgia, does an integrated resource plan. They get together and say, what do we need for the next 20 years? That's what we do in Georgia. We have to do an IRP every 3 years, project out 20 years. The priority is reliability at the most affordable rate while reducing carbon emissions as much as possible. Florida is not going to run out of power because the planning process won't allow it. A data center can't just come in all on its own and suck up all the extra electricity because it's got too many rules that are going to come into play to say, well, you're going to have to assess whether or not, and are you going to have it long term? And Florida is going to protect the ratepayers. What we've done in Georgia is we passed rules and regulations to the Public Service Commission that none of these costs can be shouldered by the ratepayers. They all have to be shouldered by the data centers. All costs, whether it's new generation, transmission, distribution, substations, all of it has to be shouldered by the data centers. So the decisions are going to be made, and that's exactly what Florida's going to do.
I mean, geez, they should have pretty deep pockets if we're talking about companies like Google and Meta and, I don't know what the other companies are. Who's got data centers in Loudon?
Well, you have the four main hyperscalers: Meta, Google, Amazon,
Hyperscale. That's the word I was
Microsoft.
trying.
But then a lot of co-location, and then you have Apple, and you have a whole bunch of those companies, and they are the biggest technology companies in the world.
Right.
But a typical build out for a data center of scale is about $3 billion. So it's certainly a lot of money and a lot of investment. And
wait, did you say $3 billion?
$3 billion.
With a buh. And about how much square footage are we talking about for $3 billion?
250, 300,000 square feet.
Right. So, one thing I was wondering about is, again, back to my tale of the Mac with the tongue sticking out. The technology that I've got on my watch right now is better and faster than I had on that Mac that we both had X number of years ago.
10.
It was a long time ago. And so whatever we're doing today with these data centers is you mentioned, what they're looking at, new technologies, but how rapidly is that technology changing? And can we see, they used to have rooms full of computers to operate, for kids to be able to register for school. And a room full of computers could do what my watch can do now. How far away are we from these data centers being maybe downsized? Is that a stupid question?
No, Dara, it's not a stupid question. But they're never going to fit on your watch, though. If you're waiting for that to happen, that just ain't going to happen. They've made a lot of progress. I mean, there was a time when the chips, when you looked at them, they were on a board and they were flat, and then they actually went to verticalizing those chips. They would stack them on top of each other. The data center folks, we need to all keep in mind that they're innovators. We're also in a competition with another country in these things. So it behooves
China, I'm guessing.
China in particular.
Right.
So it is incumbent, and we are competing with them. So we're going to be competing for the technology that's going to be the fastest, the most concentrated, that's going to use the least power, the least water. There is incentive for American companies to do that, not only for their own bottom line, but also because they understand. When you talk with the Amazons and the Googles and the other ones, they understand that they're in a competition, that our country is in a competition. So this is U.S. innovation competing with Chinese innovation.
But could this be taking place anywhere? Is there a transmission issue? Does it have to be close to where population centers are? I guess. Are
you talking about locating the data center close to?
Yeah.
They would prefer to have it. Of course, they're going to prefer to have the data center as close to possible to transmission lines.
Right.
Yeah, they want to do that. If they can't do that, they're going to have to pay for it. But yeah, of course they would prefer to have it. They're also going to want to have it located near fiber hubs. And I think Buddy has touched on that. Got some of those up in Loudon. We've got one in west of Atlanta in Georgia. So yeah, there are things that are more that incentivize them to locate in particular places. And it's about reducing costs. They're trying to reduce costs.
One of the other things that, as I was doing some research, and I actually did use Gemini to try to help generate some questions. I do this, I've started doing it even for things that I'm very familiar with. And then, of course, I go back and I research and make sure that it's not doing something weird or whatever. But one of the things, as I was talking to my friend who's in the wind industry, he was telling me, and you can give me that nice look if I'm completely wrong on this again, but he said that the average household has about 25 devices, is operating 25 devices. And I went through, now I live alone. I'm a woman of a certain age, so I'm not doing video games. And it's me and my dog, Max. He's a frequent guest of the show. And so I think I have probably 10 to 12 devices running on the internet at my house if I am there in the house at any one time. Watch, tablet, lights, name it. So, these things are they're using this data. If I'm not even, maybe what we need to do is talk about AI itself. What these data centers are doing, they're amassing the data that they're collecting from every time I ask Alexa what the weather is or whatever, for the joke of the day. I mean, what data? You're ready. Go ahead.
I'm not.
No, go ahead.
I'm just excited.
Save me from myself.
You're not, everything you're making the right points, and I'm glad you're making those points. I'm not sure about that dog. What kind of dog is it?
Oh, he's a poodle-ish. He's a rescue.
Okay. So the things around your house.
He watches TV while I'm gone. He watches Pit Bulls and Parolees.
I don't know what that is, but
it's a show about pit bulls and parolees.
And I don't know what either of those are. But the things you're talking about around your house,
yeah,
that is services that are going to be some of these. When I mentioned earlier about data storage as the platform, we're going to have services on top. Things like Amazon, when you order something, or streaming a movie, those are commercial applications. They're not AI necessarily. When you get onto Gemini or Chat GPT or others, that's getting over into the artificial intelligence world,
right? Where
it's a different lane. Those things are doing something differently than when you get onto Amazon, you order something. Amazon is not making a decision for you. They're not doing something that AI does or machine learning does. You're picking something. It's a service. They're going to use the data that's in the data storage, but it's a commercial application. Banks do that.
Okay.
The artificial intelligence is going to take that data and smart people, me not one of them, who understand how to do things like large language modeling. Don't ask me, but they're just people that can do that. They can take that data and train it to do something quicker than a human can do. That is, they're going to train this model to make a decision really quick. And what they were in the space, the national security space where I am, that's referred to as a decision edge. And so in economics or our industrial base, or particularly in the military, if you have a decision edge, you have trained this model to make a decision using that data. It's sitting on the platform, but it's its own model.
Mm-hmm.
When you get into high-level competition with other countries that have that decision edge, they win that competition. We don't want to lose that competition. So AI, just think of it. It's not Netflix and Amazon, and it is a completely different, more energy intensive.
Right. That was the
process.
point I was making is like
And I
we're
finally
sucking
got
up
to it. See, all that Lambert on it, I finally got to it and answered your question. You should have just asked me that first. Which one uses more electricity?
No, because I do think it's important to explain why we need these, what they're being used for.
So some of these things over here are just things like you had in your house.
Mm-hmm.
The things over here I'm talking about now, these are high level security issues that we're talking. But you make a good point about everything around your house. Would you consider those things, all those things you mentioned, those 11 things, necessities, or you could do without them?
Well, because I'm special.
I'm the interviewer.
Because I love that. I'm special. I have to have my phone and my watch because I'm a type 1 diabetic and I have a continuous glucose monitor that tells me what my blood sugar is all the time. And so it communicates with me and with other people who have the app so that they can save my life, which they do when I go into a coma.
So these things are more necessity than they are just convenience.
Yeah.
We've gotten into that space. We're
Right.
very
So you weren't asking me for a real answer. You wanted just sort of.
I was. You actually are on the same team I am there.
Yeah.
This now is not just a neat thing where we put Google Photos. These are now quality of life issues.
Yeah. Oh, well, this thing has actually saved my life.
See, that's the whole good. It's a good thing we just invented data storage for that one reason right there.
Right.
So you're here to do a podcast.
That's data storage. That's different than AI.
And there you go. You're throwing it right back in my face. You've got it.
He just taught me that.
Well done, Professor.
She answered
I get
her
an
own
A.
question. That's
I
how
get an
that's
A.
how you get somebody to come to you, is you get them to answer the question that they asked, and you answered it for yourself.
Oh gosh, well, you're a great professor. Your students are very fortunate.
I just have a sweet wife, and it rubs off from time to time.
I guess maybe we should go into some of the questions that maybe would help you guys as part of your education platform with why you're here. You've talked about the jobs and tax benefits. I was wondering about jobs because obviously you need technicians to fix things when the smoke comes out of the top of the computer again. But you get the construction, the capital expenses on the front side. What kind of jobs and how many jobs does this kind of industry sustain?
Well, there's about 5.5 construction jobs for every megawatt of a data center. So if you have 100 megawatt data center, that's 5.5 jobs.
Okay, remember, I know nothing. So what is a 100 megawatt data center?
It's how much power.
Average, or is that large?
No, that's actually small for today.
Okay.
I would say, if you're looking at a 300 megawatt data center, then obviously you're talking about, 1650 jobs,
right?
Construction jobs. Once it's built, then there's about 2 jobs per megawatt inside the building. And then outside the building, there's another 6 jobs for every job inside the data center. That would be, people that are doing the maintenance or people that are working on the HVAC or all of those things. So there's a wide range of jobs, from data center operations to security people to maintenance people to electricians.
And what is the number one concern that you've been having when you're talking with the legislators over the past couple of days? What have you heard the most? is it the power consumption? Is it the cost to consumers?
Cost
Is
to
that-
consumers. I believe that is the most real issue that has to be dealt with.
And do you think that there is a way to really build that into a system to be able? You said that it's not an issue for the folks in Loudon County, right?
Yeah, it hasn't been, but we're going to make sure that we codify that. I think FPL is trying to do that. I think that the legislature, at the end of the day, it's going to be the State Corporation Commission or whatever it's called here.
Public
It's
Service
the
Commission.
Public Service Commission, yeah.
that's going to determine the rates. But, when you look at how...
But the legislature can say,
Right.
this is, you're within this.
You have to pay or take, or, there's a lot of different things you want to make sure that you can do that is in the rate case that I read. But I think it's really important that that our residents are protected. That's key one. I think the other one is trying to make sure that we're not jeopardizing communities. How do we make sure these are integrated into the right place? And I think that that's where local jurisdiction has to come in and help make that determination.
And that's one of the things I believe I'm correct about this, that the governor said that he wanted a 10-year moratorium on AI data centers in Florida. That was something that he threw out over the past couple of days. He raised last week. I'm reading from a story my colleague wrote yesterday. DeSantis raised the issue of a possible 10-year preemption as he announced he was working with state lawmakers on AI legislation. That's not a 10-year moratorium. I apologize. I will correct myself right now. A preemption. I told you the state Florida legislature loves some preemption. That would give the legislature some time to create some parameters. What do you think we're going to see over the next 10 years in this space? And how desirable is Florida right now for the big data center, the big tech companies?
Florida has not been a traditional market for data centers,
Why?
at least on a large scale. I think that there's been a few reasons. I think part of that has been the historical challenges around hurricanes and things like that.
Right.
But I would say that now when you look at the resilience of the Florida grid, it's probably one of the most resilient out there. They've done such a good job. But, these things tend to cluster around each other. Florida, I believe has a real opportunity because they have available power and they have a real opportunity, but the community is going to have to want it. The legislature is going to have to decide that they want to go down this path. The local communities are going to have to decide because until then, the industry is interested and looking, but they're not going to put themselves in a position where they have to go through a long process and there's too much uncertainty.
Right. They don't. So uncertainty is never good for business.
Yeah.
How hard of a lift was it for Georgia, for folks to start locating in Georgia?
Once we had those 2 nuclear reactors up, it wasn't a tough sell. So they're wanting to come to Georgia. There's a couple of reasons why they want to come to Georgia. It's really a lot for the same reason that they are going to want to come to and are wanting to come to Florida. They still see the Southeast as a very sensible region for industry. They see it as industry friendly. They see the state governments as just being reasonable and sensible bodies of politicians that are doing what they think is best for the state. I think that's why industry sees that. One of the things, not to say this is why they're not flocking to Florida yet, once they get a bite, it's just like fishing. Once you get a bite in an area, you're probably going to go back. What they know and saw up in Loudon is that Buddy had worked and had gotten a system going. They knew they could come there because he had worked out a lot of the kinks in this system. It's that initial stage of trying to get things going that the data center folks probably realize is going to be tough because there's not a culture yet. There's not an understanding. There's not a model for it in that state. So, but he made it attractive for data centers. He brokered it well with the public. He did a good job working with whatever folks he needed to with the state. Once the data center folks see that that's the case in an area, they're going to keep coming back.
Mm. You said that you started doing this in Loudon County 20 years ago?
Yeah, 2007, 2008.
Did you have any concept of what the demand would be in 2025 when you started doing this?
I would like to say yes, but obviously the answer is no. My original plan for Data Center Alley is what we call it, was 3.5 square miles where the reclaimed loop was, and the power was already there and the fiber was there. And we had these empty buildings that were custom built before the .com bubble that were sitting empty. So my idea was, let's fill these buildings. And from there, it just, it snowballed.
Wow. Okay. Well, the rest of my questions are kind of technical questions that AI fed me. I'm not sure that how interesting they are. Permitting challenges. Maybe we talk about the federal government and how the federal government coordinates with state. I mean, I actually am going to forget about AI and I'm going to use my eye and ask you about the defense issues, the national security, because my father died when I was quite young, but he was a researcher for the Army, and he is buried in Arlington National Cemetery, and I love going to visit him, and my mother are both there. And so I'm very curious about the need, what you're talking about in terms of national security, because that maybe talk a little bit more about that, but that's not all that they're doing in these centers. And I was wondering if maybe you could give us a couple other concrete examples.
In what centers are you saying what they're doing? Oh, in the data centers.
Yes, yes, sir.
I thought we were in the military space because today,
No.
But you want to talk about the
practical applications of what they're
non-military or
everything.
Okay. Well, the military, because I thought that's where you were.
Yes, I was asking that first, and then I was asking for some other applications before we.
So on the military space, if you project forward, and all of this information, Dara, that I generally get from military people and national security people.
Mm-hmm.
We are thinking as far as any confrontation that we don't ever want, we're thinking long term that confrontation is not necessarily going to be person to person. That's not how it's probably going to be. We're not going to have trench warfare. But what we're going to do is we are going to intelligentize machinery. We're going to intelligentize military equipment. The best example of that is a drone. You send a drone out with information to make a decision and to deploy something.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever military has, again, the decision edge on that and has intelligentized its military equipment the best to perform the quickest, the fastest, the most accurately, that military is going to have the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what China, in fact, I think China's plan is called C5IRST. It's got 3 C's, communications, computers, I forget all the C's. But it's the point there is it's getting to intelligence, reconnaissance, the IRS, and targeting, and intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, and targeting. The whole point is they take those 5 C's, they package these things into a tech stack, and this military equipment is going to do the work of the Chinese military. I have dumbed that way down so that somebody like I can understand it. But what you can take from that is those drones or whatever that equipment is, they are operating off of what AI and these large language models have trained them to do. They're going to go out and make decisions. They're going to do something. They're not going to, it's not push a button, land at a certain spot. They are going to go out and they are going to make intelligent decisions. Whoever makes the best, quickest, intelligent decision has the edge there. So you can imagine an entire military that way.
Sure. And that is the best argument that you can make to people, I would imagine, you know, when you're trying to pitch a data center to a community or to a legislature. We need this for national security. We need this to get a leg up over China or to remain competitive or outdo them competitively. You know,
right.
I mean, that is kind of like the top level argument that you can make it, to my mind.
And that's it's not unusual.
I'm not saying it's a.
Oh no! I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah,
I'm agreeing with you. There are other things that have worked in the past. They're almost benign, but that's what the airline industry can imagine. If we didn't have an airline industry, what would our naval fleet, our Navy pilots, our Air Force, what would those planes be like if we didn't have an airline industry that was constantly innovating?
Sure.
We did that in the nuclear sector back in the 50s and 60s. It started out as a bomb. We transferred that over into a civilian nuclear reactor. There are several things that there are mutually beneficial applications from the national security space into the private space. The internet being one of those things. I mean, that was a government, regardless of what anybody may say. The government developed that. I think it was a DARPA.
I thought it was Al Gore.
And that's why I said no matter what anybody says. You said that. I
fell for it. I walked right in. You laid the trap, and I walked right into it.
It was either a DARPA or an ARPA type technology that was developed. But what one of the things that we probably should try and understand is, no matter what we say about data centers and AI, it's not going to stop China from doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
They do not need to have their hands on the wheel for global rules and regulations around AI. And if we don't outcompete them, they will have it. That is not the way that's not what
you're saying. It's not.
Want.
It's not just a specious argument. It's not just an argument for the sake of an argument. I understand. That's what I was saying. I wasn't trying to imply.
And I never took it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can imagine what a bad actor like China, Russia, or Iran would do if they dominated in this AI space to us socially. There's all sorts of misinformation and disinformation and things that you can do if you have intelligentized things that we are not now in front of.
Are we going? So 2 questions, and I know you all have a time, a hard stop. So, one, are we going to see more nuclear power? And 2, I was wondering if there were other applications that you can talk to us about. Maybe, Buddy, you can tell us some of the other things that these data centers or these AI data centers are being used for, other than military.
I'll answer the nuclear thing.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to have nuclear. It's probably still 5 to 10 years out, but we're going to have it. And we have to have it.
Is that going to cause, I remember no nukes is good nukes or whatever. I mean, I'm old enough to remember.
Now, no nukes will be no grid. So we're going to need that nuclear power. As we keep retiring coal plants.
So we're going to be bringing them back online.
We will.
Or adding new ones.
Let me back up. Not bringing them back online, adding new
ones. There
may be some new ones we bring online, but we're going to build new ones.
Okay.
We will.
All right.
Next generation.
That's a whole nother conversation. Okay.
I'll come back.
Goody.
So, I think that there are different kinds of data centers, cloud data centers and AI training data centers, AI inference. I think a lot of people think AI training is like what we're talking about. That's usually not what we're talking about. But just think through your day. You talked about, having a warehouse for Amazon,
Mm.
but you probably went on their website and you clicked and one click and you bought something, right? And then, so that was their data center. Then the data center does that. If you went out for lunch and you used your Visa card, that went through a data center. The Visa data center in Loudon does about 1,860,000 swipes of a credit card a minute.
Wow.
So that, I mean,
In Loudon?
in Loudon.
In Loudon?
Yeah. So that's the
But
main
it's
Visa
not just all that's being, it's processing them from all
processing
over.
information. It's dealing with that. If you do a 911 call, the chances are in most communities now that's being routed through a data center. It's a lot more than just Facebook and streaming Netflix. There's so much of what we're doing. You wouldn't be able to do your podcast without a data center. We wouldn't be able to have Zoom meetings or use Microsoft Teams, or it has become such an important function to our day-to-day lives that it's not really a question of if, it's more a question of where and how.
What about, sometimes it really freaks me out if I'm talking, and this happens to people all the time, and I was talking to my friend in my car with not my radio on, but I did have my phone on, but I wasn't engaging with it. And he was telling me about his brother, the farmer, and he was saying there's a website called datafarmer.com. And he said, have you ever gone on datafarmer.com? And I said, no. And the next day, and I have never been on any dating site, never Googled dating sites. I've written about Match and whatever when the legislature is trying to regulate those kinds of sites. The next day in my Gmail, guess what advertisement showed up? Datafarmer.com. So people are afraid. This is an example of, Big Brother, or I think there's not just NIMBY in terms of the environmental resources that these centers can take, but what the information that is being used that is being stored and gathered and collected and stored.
Yeah. And when you sign up for a Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
it's free. If you're not paying, then you're paying in a different way.
That's right. You're giving
And
away
giving
your
them
everything.
all of your information.
Yeah.
And now I would be very interested how a phone call would do that, unless that's bizarre to me and deserves
It wasn't a
better look.
phone call. We were sitting in the car talking.
Wow.
It happened to me one time.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was about Cheerios, a box of Honey Nut
So
Cheerios.
it did happen to you.
One time.
So it was the professor
This
too.
was
It's not
after-
just Dara.
This was after 5 years of me telling my children there's no such bunk as that, and it happened. I still think it was coincidental.
But not data farmer.
It was not. It was about Honey Nut Cheerios. I got an ad within 5 minutes.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to you guys before I ask you a couple of fun questions. Just tell me, what would you like to talk about that I didn't ask about?
I would say the one thing, talking to legislators this week and just elected officials and state officials is, again, hitting and reinforcing the benefits of the state. As we're discussing and debating the property tax issue, a large, significant amount of money, revenues is going to be removed from the coffers of government. So hearing what Buddy's been through in Loudon County, data center, the tax revenue has been able to take away a lot of the tax burden on residents and put it on data centers, where all of a sudden now you're also, in addition to that, creating these scaled up services, new roads, new infrastructure, new schools, things like that, aren't being paid for by taxpayers previously. So it's a great way to offset some of these, really important policy discussions that are going on down the street in the Capitol right now.
In a way that really probably doesn't need as many services as some other kinds of
That's correct.
Of development of other industries.
That's right. I think the thing that I think is important.
This is Buddy from Loudon
Yes.
County, Virginia, talking
Yeah.
now.
I think the thing that's important is to understand there's a difference between process and policy. Right now, Florida's going through the process, and they should go through the process, and it should be a thoughtful, fact-based process. And then they'll get to policy and figure out what's best for the community. But it is important that all stakeholders are heard. It's important that, real information gets considered and that everyone has the opportunity to weigh in and understand what they're getting into.
And Dara, there's nothing else I can add. This is David from Oconee County, Georgia, by the way. There's nothing else I can add to what they said, really. I think the main summary point there, it's not something we didn't discuss, but this is something that the state legislators, the utilities need to be engaging the public in right now.
Okay. Well, this has been really, thank you for making me feel so comfortable asking questions and not feeling stupid about something that I know very little about. Like I said, really had a crash course. And yes, I did get my driver's license replaced. So don't worry, I'm not driving around without a driver's license in case datafarmer.com is listening. But let me ask you a couple of fun questions. This is one that we ask. I don't know. You live in Virginia. You live in Georgia. I'm pointing. I hate people who point. And I don't know. This is what politicians always do, right? With their thumb up. I don't know what that is. I'm not sure.
Bob Dole. That's how Bob Dole did it.
With it down, right? That's what they teach you to do, not to point. Kevin, you live in Florida, right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so Crocs, yay or nay?
Nay.
Huh? What?
Crocs. The shoes?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, Crocs, yay or nay?
That's a nay for me.
Nay.
Nah.
Nah.
Nay.
That was a hell no.
I've got a
there.
pair that I wear one day out of the year at the beach when we come down to Florida for our family vacation. I'll wear them one time because my grandchildren want to see Papa wear a pair of Crocs instead of a pair of boots.
Buddy?
Crocs, no. Sandals, yes.
Okay. All right. There we go. Favorite app on your phone? Oh, first of all, iPhone? I'm doing it again, pointing. iPhone. Yeah, you said you're in the bad marriage, right? Yeah. iPhone. Favorite app?
No, I didn't say I was in a bad marriage. I said I'm in the ecosystem.
I said you're in the bad marriage.
No.
I thought you were.
He's spicy. I like that. I am in the bad marriage. Yeah. He's spicy. That's good.
Spotify.
I love
Both for
Spotify.
music and podcasts.
Me too. Okay, great.
All right, Buddy took mine. I'll go Spotify's first. Second is Waze.
Waze, traffic.
Mm-hmm.
No, for me, I'm an iPhone guy, and definitely love my YouTube. I can stream that on the TVs at hotel rooms and things like that. And also Instagram as well. I'll come clean. I'll go with the Instagram.
Really?
Stuff too.
Do you post?
I do some.
All right, I'm gonna have to follow you. I need somebody to give me every time I use it, I feel really old and stupid because it's.
What is your whatever handle? That's a CB term from way back. What are you on LinkedIn?
I am at the Dara Cam on everything.
Okay.
So I'm pretty easy to find. And the podcast also has an Insta account, and my people do a good job with that. What's your favorite podcasts? Other than Deeper Dive, which you've never listened to, I'm sure, but
will.
You'll have to listen to this one, please.
But will, yeah, for sure. I like mostly business related and economics podcasts, and I listen to most of the CNBC stuff, and I listen to the Tim Ferriss podcasts. And
do you listen to that one Malcolm Gladwell
I do.
does? Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah,
he's controversial, but I really
those thinking pieces and investing. Investing podcasts.
There's another one. Walter Isaacson does one. Do you listen to that?
Yeah, he's a tremendous biographer and does a very good job.
Yeah, I like that one too.
I'd say for me, I'm a big soccer fan, so all the soccer podcasts I definitely watch, and of course we'll be listening to yours as well moving forward.
And Dr. Gattie, David.
I'm just kind of stumped. I listen to so many podcasts through the day, especially when I'm driving.
Right, me too.
that I'm kind of embarrassed that I can't bring.
Well, you'll have to look at your Spotify because it'll tell you in your Wrapped what your favorite podcast was for the year. But listen, thank you so much. This has been so edifying and you've been so easy to speak with. I really want to have you guys back sometime whenever we can do a Zoom or whatever. Buddy Rizer, Executive Director, Loudon County Economic Development, Dr. David Gattie, Associate Professor of Engineering at the University of Georgia, and a whole lot more that I didn't fit in there, and Kevin Doyle, Florida Executive Director of the Consumer Energy Alliance. Thank you guys so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC.